It's been a crazy 48 hours since we entered into the Strife of 8 KvK in the season of Conquest, and it's true. Players that work on their technology can get up to 7 total marches that they can use on the field. So in this video, we're going to be talking about how you can even get enough crystals to get to the point where you could have 7 marches, and we'll also talk about whether or not having 6 or 7 marches on the field even makes a ton of sense for most players. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, a sponsored content creator for Rise of Kingdoms, and I'm very much looking forward to exploring and unlocking all of the technology in the season of Conquest KvK. But in order to do that, you need a ton of crystals, and there are much fewer ways to spend to get crystals than there were in the past. This means the gap between pay to win and free to play has in some ways shrunk. So let's first talk about all of the different ways that you can get crystals, and I want to start with Bastion quests. Now, we are in the Strife of the 8, so the Bastion quests work the same way, but don't give you extra commander skills, and I'll have a card up in the top if you want to see how crazy extra commander skills can be. The Bastion quests have changed, by the way, and it's pretty interesting. The very best Bastion quests that give the best rewards are the ones that involve troop training, are the ones that involve gathering, and also that involve Sunset, or rather Lost, Canyon. The reason that those are the very best Bastion quests in the game now is that they give you a bone whistle. The bone whistle you use to summon a Kahar, and you battle the Kahar to get some extra crystals. You want as many crystals as you can possibly get, as fast as you can get them, and getting them from these bastions is a free-to-play way to go about that. Now, there is something you can do that was not here in the past. You can, every 10 minutes, go and refresh a Bastion quest, which is pretty cool. You can see I've got a 3-minute timer left before I can go and do that again. However, there are still a lot of quests that you probably don't want to do. Requests for giving up your materials at either the normal or the green tier. Quests for giving up your resources, which, like, I don't know why I would want to give those up. One of the easier quests that you could take, but it's not amazing, is just going and gathering runes. At least you're not giving something up, right? So the disparity between the quests is actually wider than ever. The quests that are not amazing are costing you materials and don't take as much time, but the quests that are definitely way better are going to involve a little bit more effort and are going to reward you disproportionately, like really, really well. So you want to hunt for those quests that are going to give you a bone whistle. I've only gotten 8 so far. Theoretically, if you were really patient and you were refreshing these things constantly, you could make your way up to 15 bone whistles a day. And that might not sound like much, but each Kahar is giving 30,000 crystals base. You also are going to have technology that gives more crystals every time you battle a Kahar. That is plunder technology. So yeah, I think that going and doing this is a really great way to get extra crystals if you have a lot of time. And I'm telling you, I spent a lot of time in this game, and it's taken me forever to get these quests, to do bone whistles. At some point, I'm just going to have to give up and take quests like this that I'm a little bit less excited about. Now, as you go and complete these quests, you're going to get favor with these different bastions, and that means that you'll start to get extra crystals from your crystal mine as well, which is another merit to just getting the quests done as fast as you can. And you can only do 15 quests a day, but you can still refresh the quest options after you've done your 15 quests. So once you bang out the 15 quests you want to do, keep refreshing these to look for quests that you actually want on your next day so that you can go in and have a whole bunch of quests you want to do lined up. This is a really important way to get a ton of free-to-play crystals. The other really important way to get a ton of free-to-play crystals is actually to go and just battle barbarians. Never before have you been able to convert your action points so amazingly into crystals. And that is in part because the cost of battling barbarians has gone down in the new version of Season of Conquest, but the rewards are about the same from what they were previously. This means that these rewards are better than ever, and if you followed what I did last KvK, I'll have a card up in the top about AoE barb farming. That's area of effect damage to aggro multiple barbarians for the cost of 1. In other words, you spend, what is it, like 70 or 80 action points, depending on what commander you're using, and you'll be able to, in this instance, I mean, heck, I could chain all these barbs in one go. I could get 10 barbs for the price of one. And you'd better believe that that's definitely some value. And not every barbarian you smash is going to be amazing rewards, but every now and then, boom, 2 green materials. There it is, right? That random interval reinforcement kicking in big time. Now, I still need to go in and do a ton of data collection to say for sure whether or not barbarian loot is actually about the same, but the AP cost is down. It does look that way offhand, however, which is pretty impressive. The other thing I'll mention about battling barbarians, and you can also get crystals from doing barbarian forts, but it's this chaining that really gives you disproportionate and insane value. But the thing I'll also say about these barbs is that during the Mightiest Governor's second day, when you're battling barbs, you get a lot of points for battling higher level barbs. That might be a great time to pick up a ton of crystals and to also get a bunch of Mightiest Governor score. The next thing I want to talk about that is actually going to save you crystals, besides, leveling up your crystal mine and keeping that going on an ongoing basis, is an idea around break-evens on your return on investment. And that sounds way more complex than I intended. I won't get into that in a too mathy way, but what I'll say is that there are things that are going to reduce your crystal cost. There are things that are going to, in the technology, increase the amount of crystals you get and favor that you get. These cost some number of crystals to get, however. So the question becomes, when is the break even? In other words, when are you going to get more crystals than you spent on this research? This actually matters a lot more than you might think, because the very first fighting is going to be when Pass 4 opens, and that's within about 8 or 9 days of when you enter into KvK. You could be battling a neighbor in another zone. So the reason I mentioned break-evens is that, sure, you could go in and you could max all of the more economic, value-oriented technology in this tree, or you could go and invest in more of the war-related technology. And at some point, it is just spending too much. It's an over-optimization to be continuing to invest in things like treaties and cultural exchange if what you wanted to do was sort of best prepare for the fight that is on your doorstep. Now, I mention this because in our KvK, for example, if we can't fight our way against our neighbor kingdom and battle out of the zone, I mean, our KvK is basically over. So we need to be able to fight. We need to have sort of the maximum punch we can have. And I think that spending past sort of the levels where I have here for treaties and cultural exchange and skillful operation is where you have left the realm of sort of the break-even value for that first fight. Of course, over the long haul, investing in all that economic technology up front is really, really good. I'm calling it economic technology. There's only one tree. But things like plunder, giving you extra crystals from going and battling Kahars, things like skillful operation. If you want to optimize for your first fight, just be careful that you're not maxing those out. Now, on the topic of maxing things out, in order to get the very first extra march, the 6th march, you're going to have to go and get marching orders number 2 up to 7. That is this right over here. And I've been informed that getting this up to 7 is going to require a whole heck of a lot of what is back here anyways. So over the coming days, we'll have a much better sense of all of the relationships and requirements between each of these technologies to give you the optimal path for arriving at 6 marches and the optimal path for arriving at 7 marches. P.S. One thing I want to add about this technology, and specifically the more economic technology, I'm going to include in that definition of the economic technology the tech that is going to give you bonus damage to barbarians. And if you try to go an AoE barb farm, like right out of the gate with your, no tech commanders, you are going to get pretty wrecked by those barbs. You're definitely going to want to get some amount of this barbarian battling technology as early as you can, so you can start AoE barb farming with a good bit more ease. Of course, there are also ways that you can go and spend money to get more crystals. There are a couple things that I'll call your attention to. One of those is milestone bundles when you're working on your 2 crystal buildings here, and as well as when you're doing some of the research, you'll have some bundles pop up. Those are pretty decent value. You could go in as well and pick up a daily bundle That is in the super value section. I've already max purchased that. You can spend up to $35 for a little over 1 million or so crystals. You also can do, and this is probably the best value of all, a premium season crystal supply, which is going to give you a small amount of crystals every day. That's a pretty solid pickup. It also looks like there's an option to renew it. I don't know if that actually will do anything. I don't think it will give you more crystals every day, but I don't. Anyways, there's a bundle that is not directly related to crystals, but I actually think is pretty good for this, which is the Treasure of the King, because it gives you 500 action points. If you're AoE barb farming, I mean, it's a decent amount of crystals on top of what you're getting in this bundle. I actually think it's a pretty decent pickup, and I'm personally doing that, going and getting Mulan, even though, I don't know, will I use her? Maybe in my 7th March I'll use Mulan. Which brings me to the final point. Should you work towards 7 marches, and should you worry about being able to field 7 combinations of commanders on the field at the exact same time? And for most players, I think the answer is obviously no. Most players are still working on having 5 really good marches in the field. And for most players, I would really recommend, I mean, gosh, the older your kingdom is, the more important this is. But instead of bringing 5 moderately geared commanders, that you focus on bringing 2 to 3 pairs of commanders, or even 1 to 2 pairs of commanders where you've got mostly epic gear. So, for instance, this is one of my weaker sets, and I get this is a pretty solid set of gear over here. But you want to have more commanders looking kind of like this. You could swap this out for an epic piece of equipment. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. I'm working towards some sets, but that's a separate idea. But you want to have gear that is mostly epic and maybe some blue, depending on what those blue pieces are, and you know, whether or not they're offering a premium stat like health, that might be more reasonable and acceptable, such as the Gatekeeper's Shield. That's a pretty good item. There's a chest piece for archers. I think it's Commander's Plate or something like that. It gives a bunch of health. That's pretty reasonable. So your gear will determine how many marches you really ought to bring. In addition, your commander depth obviously is a factor in how many marches you want to bring onto the field, and even your power overall would determine how many marches you want to bring on the field. And the reason I ask that about your power is, you know, how fast can you afford to lose troops? How many troops do you want to drop into a garrison or a rally? And how many resources do you have? Do you have enough resources to be battling in the field for as long as you want to be playing the game with 7 marches? Maybe. Maybe not, though. It gets pretty expensive. And so at that point, if you think resources are at any point in time going to be your bottleneck, you would be much better off having fewer, stronger marches and having a bit more resource efficiency, as long as you're playing with a team and you're sticking in a nice group. But I did mention rallies and garrisons, because for almost all moments of true importance on the battlefield, there is going to be a rally and garrison battle taking place, or at least one of them, right? And usually multiple. So something that I might do with my 7 marches, if I don't feel like creating more than 5 really good sets of gear, and I probably will go for a 6th, I'll be honest. I probably will go for 6, and I might even go for 7. But something I could do is take a commander like Hannibal Barca and Julius Caesar and Freddy that have extra capacity, and I could start to use those to fill garrisons, and I could start to use those to fill rallies, and just put a bunch of, you know, March speed windswept gear onto them and use them to fill. And that would be a really easy way for me to still field fight with 5 great marches, instead of putting some of my really geared out marches into somebody else's rally or into a garrison. Now I'll be using a filler march to go and fill a garrison with that 6th or 7th march. And over time, for accounts that are much older, they can start to work on having 6 or 7 field fighting marches. The whales, the like mega whales, because I'm like, I'm definitely a whale in this game. But will I have 7 marches? Probably. But for folks that are spending a lot, that want to field fight with 7 marches, right? Like, they've probably got the depth of gear, and they'll start doing that right away, and that makes sense for them. But for most players, you probably shouldn't be thinking or worrying too much about that 6th march. And I think it's going to take so many crystals. I don't yet know if in the first fights, people are even going to have 6 marches yet, even if you spend the maximum amount. And I guess that's going to depend in part on whether or not we see a Mountain War bundle when this pass opens. The Mountain War bundle was a bundle that we saw previously, where when a pass would open to a new zone, you would get a bundle that was the highest value for crystals you could get, with the exception maybe of the crystal supply as an example. Overall, I'm eager to still see what we think the balance is for this new crystal technology. It is very, very skewed toward attack. In fact, all of the stats point you toward attack, which might just mean that defense and health are the very best stats to pick up in the game. And for your gear, if a piece of gear has attack, that might be something you look to upgrade out of, or honestly, avoid spending the extra materials to upgrade to a higher tier of gear that just gives you attack. Because if you are thinking that you'll max this attack-related technology, we've got 5% over here at the start that pretty much everybody's going to get very quickly. We've got another 12%, so we're up to 17. We've got even more over here, another 10%, so what, we're up to 27% attack. Cruise down the line a little bit further, and we've got another 15. I mean, I might have missed something along the way, but there's diminishing returns on those stats, and all these attack stats makes me think that focusing, if you want value and efficiency, on defense and health is going to be really important. But what do you think about this tech overall? I'm reserving my judgment until I see how a KvK actually plays out while I'm using it, but I'm eager for your thoughts, which you could leave down below in the comments, or join my Discord server, discord.gg/Chisgule. There's over 20,000 folks in there that are eager to chat with you about what they think about this KvK, and I'm eager to hear it too. Until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.